We are back on MorningLine. Thanks for joining us. Our guest, elder care attorney Tim Takacs, and as he says, as it should become as no surprise, during this pandemic, a lot of people looking at more estate planning, getting it in place.
Exactly.
And Tim, talk about then again the I guess guidelines on where to start on this and how you're helping folks.
Well, for one, is we're talking about I mentioned earlier we're doing what we call our fast track estate planning. So we're making sure. I mean, people obviously they're worried about getting their documents and getting their ducks in a row. So we're getting them on the phone. We're sending them a workbook. We're having them fill that out. We want to get some essential information about them. We're sending them. We're mailing them documents or emailing documents. We're going to be doing the remote notary so that we can watch them sign, so we can notarize their documents, so they can sign their legal documents right in their living room. They can send them back to us. We'll notarize them. We'll scan them, so we have copies. We'll make copies for them, and we'll mail their originals back. And this is something that we want to get done within 30 days.
And Tim,
so
just so we're clear for folks, I understand the process and all that, and that's what I'm going to hire you for. But telling me about the process, my eyes glaze over because I'm not going to do this. I'm hiring you to do that. I want to know though. All right, Tim, how are you going to help me divvy up my assets among my family members? It's all about the will for me.
Yes.
Okay, so what, I mean, especially if it's contentious, And I know you always look out for your client, number one, even in the face of other family members.
Mm-hmm. Right, so let's say we have a client that's worried about, well, I want to make sure that my daughter, she's on Social Security disability. I want to make sure that what she gets goes into a trust.
Right.
I've got a son that I really don't all that trust very much, and I don't see him very often. How do I make sure that he gets what he's supposed to get and no more? In a lot of cases like that, we don't really want to, a will may not be really what they need. We're really looking at setting up a trust for them.
Okay, and talk about the difference then there, because you've told me about that before, and it's case by case. That's a good point.
It is a case by case, and so, like a case where you have a disabled child or maybe a special needs child, those persons, those beneficiaries don't need their money, outright, because a lot of times they're going to lose a benefit, like SSI or Medicaid or TennCare or whatever. So we want to make sure that whatever money they get or property they get goes into a trust. Now, we may set up a trust during their lifetime. So you have, so here's Tim Takacs that says, okay, I've got 4 children, which I don't, but, so I want to set up a trust. So when I pass away, those assets that I've set up that are in that trust, for one, is they're not going to go through probate.
Yep.
So I'm going to have a trustee. I'm going to have some other family member who I know is going to carry out my wishes, who's going to make sure that those assets get distributed out and go where they need to go. So that's, and so they don't have to go through probate court to do that. Now, if it's contentious, sometimes that's what probate court is for. Mm-hmm. If people are, people feel like they've gotten cheated or whatever it is, that's what the judge is for. But in most of our cases, our clients, they want it to go smoothly. They want it to go without contention. They want to make sure that their wishes are set out exactly, and that those wishes are carried out. And a lot of times that's what we're going to use a trust for. So so our client passes away. They have a trustee that now is holding those assets and is going to be distributing them out, or maybe holding those assets in trust for maybe a special needs child or other family member who maybe has creditor problems, health issues, maybe going through a bankruptcy, all those sorts of things that, that's essentially what we're doing when we're doing this. That's really estate planning.
I'm wondering, Tim, just from all the years you've done this, and I don't know anyone who knows more about it than you, really, truly. What percentage of the U.S. population would you say, just off the top of your head, has not really addressed estate planning at this point for themselves and just hasn't done it yet? How many?
I'd say probably 50%.
50%. And those who don't, and God forbid something happens to them, if there isn't a plan in place, where does it go then?
Basically, where it goes is if you're married and you have no children, it goes to your spouse. If you are married and have children, if your assets are held jointly with your spouse, it's going to go to your spouse because that's the way the assets go, because that's the way they're titled. Otherwise, you're married and you have children, then your spouse gets a certain percentage, and then your children get the rest of it. And obviously that can be a real problem for people who have blended families and have no plan. I mean, because I can tell you stories about how that happened. Where assets got outside the family because, so and so died and left the farm to his, to his wife, and then his wife remarried, and then she died and left the house and left the farm and it got out of the family. So that's not estate planning.
Yeah, gotcha.
That's not what they planned.
Yes.
So that's essentially the kind of things that we're talking about here, is to make sure your assets go where you want them to go.
Tim, we have a question from someone on Facebook, Crystal, asking, and I think it's a good one. I hope you know maybe the answer or how this would work out. If you have a loved one that is living in an assisted living or nursing home facility, and they are now at the point where they are being paid by Medicaid's picking it up for them because they no longer have any assets as a paying, and then they get a stimulus check, which I would think they probably would, if they're still getting Social Security. Could that in any way jeopardize their standing with regard to the Medicaid? And would you think Medicaid might take the stimulus check, or would they be allowed to keep it?
I think what's going to happen on that is that that's going to be maybe what's called an exempt asset.
Okay.
So in other words, it's just money that they got. Unlike because I read about this just recently with SSI, that I think that's what's likely to be happening.
No, that's a good point. Because SSI,
person SSI gets money.
Yeah.
They get money, and what do they lose? They lose their TennCare.
Right.
And for a lot of them, it's not the $700 and some a month that they really are worried about. They're worried about losing their TennCare.
That's exactly right. And I think go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry. Go ahead. So you're saying
that's a gift that they don't want.
Yeah. But this gift, I think you're right. I think this money's going, and it's not going to have a bearing on your Medicaid. It's not going to have SSI. You're right. You make any money on SSI, and it affects your benefit. But this gift, which is what it is, though some may pay taxes on the stimulus down the road, is something that will not affect your SSI, and it should not affect the Medicaid residents.
Medicaid, right?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right on that. That was a good question. There are so many people, so many questions come up on that regard. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I will say about that Nick is if you're a nursing home resident and you're on Medicaid, you can have $2,000.
Yeah. Okay.
So some of them, unless you're bumping up into already having $2,000 in your bank account, maybe having that money is. That kind of like replenish that coffer a little bit.
Actually, that's a great point. I mean, now some people on Medicaid who are in nursing homes are still collecting maybe a modest sum in Social Security if they're of that age, right?
Yeah, they are. But if they're in a nursing home and on Medicaid, that's the amount that that's their co-payment.
Exactly. So then if they
get $50 out of that.
Okay, and then in this case, if they get the stimulus, they don't have to pay that. They can put that, and as you said, will replenish. And I think that's something a lot of them are looking forward to, because then they can take it to the market and buy themselves a pie. Or whatever they want to spend it on, which is kind of a neat thing.
Yes.
Just hearing so many people excited about getting some of this money. All right, Tim, just real quick, let's go over again. Our segment's running to an end here, but if folks want to get some of this planning in place, talk about where you're located, how they can contact you. And a lot of people are going to say, well, I want to do this, but I don't have a huge estate and I can't afford to pay thousands of dollars to get some of this set up.
Right. So one is, just answer the last question first, is that we know that we welcome people's phone calls. So our job, we feel like we're blessed to come on MorningLine and OpenLine, and we know that we're not a good fit for everybody. But if you call our office, we're going to try to make sure we find somebody that can help you.
Yeah, and there's the number up on the screen. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah. Maybe you're calling from someplace, that's not in our area. It's like maybe, 100. I mean, I know that your reach is broad. maybe you're calling from 100, 150 miles away from Hendersonville and say, look, I want to find somebody here locally. Do you know somebody? We're going to help you find somebody.
Okay, and again, you're over yeah.
We're in Hendersonville.
Yep.
Right now, as I mentioned, is that we're not seeing people. We don't want you to come in. We want to do all of this either by Skype or Zoom, or you get on your mobile phone and we'll do FaceTime or however way you want to do it. So we'll talk to you that way. We'll do all of this by email. We'll do all of this by mail. We'll make sure we'll help you get your estate planning in place. When all of this is over, we want to then come into the office and we want to talk to you. Yeah. We want to make sure that what you've got is going to work for you. We want to make sure that we know what your situation is now. That's what we're gonna help you with.
Well, the good thing is what I hear you saying too, and this goes back to our first caller, Melinda, is that you are not closed for business, and if you want to set up this estate planning now, it's not something you have to wait until the pandemic passes. The apparatus, a lot of the courts are kind of closed and limited, especially on the criminal side, but that's not what you'll be dealing with. You'll be dealing with Tim and his office.
Exactly. All of us are working, so we're working every day. So we're working from home. We do have somebody. Usually we'll have one person go into the office because they can. Yeah. Now, I will say, and you mentioned already, once before, Nick, my bow tie. Mm-hmm. A shout out to Associate Pastor Deanna Wall. Okay. I was scheduled to do a program at the Cornerstone Church in Nashville on March 14 on essential legal documents. Yep. It got canceled, or we're going to reschedule it later in the year. But the congregation sent the tie as a gift. I appreciate that.
They know you. Always dapper. Tim, listen, thank you for joining this morning, and you stay safe, and my best to your lovely wife. And we'll talk again. But it's terrific seeing you, and I'm glad you're up and in business. All right.
Same to you.
All right.
Take care.
Take care, my friend.
Bye,
Tim and
everybody.
I go way back. He's terrific. We'll take a break. When we come back, programming note for you. I will give you his contact information one more time and answer a couple questions for you guys with regard to any confusion about whether you're getting SSI or not, whether you get a stimulus check. And the answer is yes. I don't want you to get confused with what we were just talking about. You will get a check. It's not going to affect your benefit. It will not affect you if you're on Medicaid. Yes, if you're on SSI, disability, you are in the system and you will get a stimulus check. We'll take a break, be back to wrap things up right after this.